whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation. We're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Tonight on Farage, it's policing all the way. Yes, absolutely. Boris will get no more fines. Where does that leave Starmer? We're being told by a very senior police regulator that police must use discretion if people are out shoplifting. Should people really not be arrested for shoplifting? We'll discuss and debate that. Are we being ripped off at the fuel pumps? I wonder. And joining me on Talking Pint, star of stage and screen, Bobby Davro. But before all of that, let's get the news.
Nigel, thank you. The top story is the Prime Minister's been told he won't receive a second fine for breaching COVID laws. The Metropolitan Police has now concluded its investigation into parties at Downing Street and Whitehall. In total, 126 referrals have been made for fixed penalty notices for breaking lockdown rules during the pandemic. 83 people received fines, 28 of those were given between 2 and 5 referrals. A musician fascinated by serial killers has been jailed for life for the murder of Bobby Ann McLeod. The 18-year-old was hit twice on the head while she waited for a bus in Plymouth last November. Cody Ackland then put her in his car and killed her in a remote car park on Dartmoor. He's going to serve a minimum of 31 years. Downing Street denies blocking the Treasury from imposing a windfall tax on oil and gas companies. The Prime Minister's official spokesman has acknowledged reports of a division between the departments, but insists Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak are aligned on the issue. The Chancellor is under mounting pressure to produce a package of support after inflation hit a 40-year high. The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the government needs to do more.
People are really struggling with their bills. Inflation's up, prices are up, wages are down, and the government is imposing tax on them at the same time. And he's got no answers. And he had the opportunity. One of the answers is staring the Prime Minister in the face, a windfall tax to reduce bills by up to £600 for those that most need it, on the profits that oil and gas companies didn't expect to make.
Finland and Sweden say they're going to address Turkey's concerns over their NATO ambitions, with discussions to continue in the coming days. The leaders are in Washington meeting President Biden, who says both countries meet all NATO requirements. He's submitting paperwork to the US Congress for speedy approval if all 30 NATO members agree the expansion. A Ukrainian prosecutor is seeking a life sentence for a Russian soldier in the first war crimes trial since Moscow's invasion. 21-year-old tank commander Vadim Shishimarin has pleaded guilty to the murder of an unarmed civilian. In court, he apologised to the victim's widow and asked for her forgiveness. Prosecutors say he fired several shots from a car after being ordered to do so. The Joint Committee on Vaccines and Immunisation is now advising that all people over the age of 65 be offered a COVID booster jab this autumn. The UK Health Security Agency says the current view is that frontline workers and those in clinical risk groups should also be vaccinated. And winners of the UK's biggest ever lottery prize have been revealed. Take a look at Joe and Jess Thwaite, claiming a record-breaking £184 million on a lucky dip ticket. The Gloucester couple, who've been married for 11 years, say now they've got time to dream. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News. Now it's Farage.
Good evening, everybody. Lots of policing stories today. As Boris Johnson is told, he will not get any more fines. Mrs Johnson, despite the ABBA party, also will not get any more fines. And politics is an extraordinary game of snakes and ladders, so I guess it's Keir Starmer potentially now on the hook. We'll talk about that. But something I consider to be far more serious are the comments of Andy Cook, the new Chief Inspector of Constabulary. And overnight, we've heard him tell us that the impact of poverty and the impact of lack of opportunity for people does lead to an increase in crime. There's no two ways about it. And when it comes as to how police should operate in this environment of increasing poverty, he says they've got to bear in mind what is the best thing for the community and the individual in the way they deal with these issues. And I certainly fully support police officers using their discretion. So you're caught shoplifting, but you show the police officer the size of your debit on your bank account, and that's okay, is it? No, I think this is a very, very slippery slope. We know there are going to be millions of people living in poverty. We know it's going to be very, very tough. But this, to me, is almost encouraging criminality. I find it astonishing. I find it extraordinary. And Kit Malthouse, the policing minister, he felt much the same way when he appeared on GB News breakfast programme this morning. Well, I was hoping for that clip from GB News, but for some reason we haven't got it. I thought the gremlins had all been cleared up, but obviously not. You tell me what you think. Should shoplifters be prosecuted? Yes or no? Farage at gbnews.uk. First, let's think about Westminster. I'm joined by Tom Harwood, our political correspondent. Tom, I mean, one never knows with this what's going to come next. So it seems to me that Boris Johnson got a fine for walking into a room not knowing there was a birthday cake going to be presented, but he's not going to be receive a fixed penalty notice for anything else.
It's the most extraordinary roller coaster, and this whole story since the beginning of Partygate has been a roller coaster. At various points the Prime Minister's position has seemed incredibly safe. At various points it has seemed like the Prime Minister would be gone in the morning. I mean, we'll remember there was one particular moment just before the MP Christian Wakeford defected to the Labour Party. Just before then, Whips estimated that we were 1 or 2 letters to Sir Graham Brady away from the Prime Minister having a no-confidence vote forced upon him. And then suddenly there was unity in the Conservative Party again. I mean, this story has been the most remarkable one of ups and downs. And yet again, this morning, late this morning, just before midday, we had it confirmed that the Prime Minister would not receive any more fixed penalty notices. It's something that surprised so many people. And indeed, I was sitting in that lobby briefing this morning, or early this afternoon, with the Prime Minister's official spokesman, and we journalists around the room from various different publications had to ask the question 3 or 4 different times. Really? No more fixed penalty? The Met Police have told you no more fixed penalty notices, because everyone was expecting, because that bar was so low for that first notice.
After the first fine.
After the first fine, everyone was expecting, well, if they're going to fine him for this cake, what else?
3 or 4 more.
Just about everyone in the country would potentially be subject to fines.
So if he's got that, he's obviously very happy with that. We've still got the Grey report to come, haven't
That's
we?
certainly true. What this now means, because we'll remember, back in January, we were expecting this Sue Gray report, and then at the end of January, the Met Police launched this investigation. Now, that meant that Sue Gray couldn't publish anything about the events that were being investigated. So now, finally, the Met Police investigation has concluded. We're expecting Sue Gray's report early next week. She's working quickly to finish it and wants to publish it as soon as possible, and crucially before the summer recess, so that this can all be sorted in this Parliament.
And that report, I'm guessing, will be more about the culture that existed within Number 10. Would that be right?
Well, we got a taster of it in the interim report that was published in the middle of the police investigation, and it did speak about culture. And of course, this isn't just about Number 10, this is about Whitehall as well, the whole civil service. Sometimes I stand outside Downing Street and explain to viewers, this isn't just sort of the one door that we know, it all connects. Number 10 is connected to number 11, is connected to number 12, 9, and all the way down Whitehall as well. These are hundreds of offices and hundreds of people. But yes, clearly something was quite wrong, and clearly there was a mindset, a sort of bubble mindset within Downing Street throughout a lot of this pandemic.
No, well, it's going to be very interesting to see what she says, but it looks like for Boris, it's over. Which means, in this extraordinary upside-down world, that suddenly it's Keir Starmer potentially in a lot more trouble.
Well, the fate of the leader of Her Majesty's opposition rests in the hands of one of the smallest police forces in the country. It's really quite extraordinary that a small team in Durham Constabulary will decide if Sir Keir Starmer remains as leader of the Labour Party or not. Now, the Labour Party is outwardly confident. Today they have been sending photographs of what happened inside Durham Miners Hall on that evening in 2021 in April. Now, it has to be said, a lot of people say that April, well, of course, it wasn't full lockdown. Well, it was the same month that the Queen sat alone at the funeral of her husband in Windsor. It was the same month where indoor socialising, indoor mixing was banned. And so this really is a fairly serious investigation. Clearly, Durham Police feel like it has met the grounds for investigation, and we keep hearing changing stories. At first, Sir Keir Starmer said 6 people were there, then 10 people. Now we're thinking 20 people were there. It just seems like the story keeps shifting about who was there, about how much curry was ordered, what was drunk. Was this a social event or a work gathering? That is what must be determined.
Well, Tom, the best thing for you and I on this is not to make any predictions at all, because this is a totally unpredictable game. And thank you. Well, I have to say, the Met's behaviour over all of this has been really astonishing. One minute they're going to, the next minute they're not. Really very, very odd. But not as odd as those comments from Andy Cook that I mentioned earlier, the new Chief Inspector of Constabulary. So basically what he's saying is, when people are poorer, they are more likely to commit crime. I do half wonder whether that's not a very insulting comment to those that are struggling financially. But more alarming to me is this idea that police officers should use discretion when it comes to street crime, when it comes effectively to shoplifting. And I worry what sort of door that opens up. Well, Parm Sandhu, former Chief Superintendent in the Met, joins me on this. Just to begin, I mean, what on earth have the Met been doing over these Downing Street parties? You know, the Sue Gray report had to be suspended. What have they been thinking?
I think that now that it's ended, that will be a good start for careers to restart and for people to get on with their jobs. I think everybody's getting bored with Partygate. It's just gone on for such a long time.
No, I think the general public, we were in Hull last week and people were very bored with Partygate, and now that Labour are in some trouble, it's kind of neutralised it politically. But my question is about the Met. There's hardly been clear, decisive leadership from the Met on this, has there?
It has been quite confusing with, are the Met going to investigate it or aren't they? And the cost of the investigation, it wasn't a quick investigation. It's taken many, many months, and a number of detectives that could have been doing other jobs. They've been taken away from frontline policing, helping people who need them, who are in crisis, and looking at fixed penalty notices, which is not really acceptable at all.
No, and what about Andy Cook? What about this new Chief Inspector of the Constabulary? I mean, he's the regulator, effectively, you know, for the 43 police forces across the country and how they behave and what they do, and that's where many complaints would go from members of the public. There may well be a link between increased poverty and crime, although, as I say, I think that's quite insulting to many poorer people. But, I mean, how do you use discretion with a shoplifter?
Police officers have always been able to use discretion. It's nothing new. But what is being suggested here is if you get a person who is stealing food to eat, not to feed a drugs habit, but to eat, should we be clogging up the court system with that person, or should we be looking at what help that person needs? Because normally police get involved when there's a crisis. So it might be that person
But how would
needs...
you judge it? How would you judge it? I mean, you talked about police officers' time being used up over potential fixed penalty notices. I mean, what do? You say, right, OK, we've caught you with a loaf of bread, you know, under your overcoat. We're now going to go through your bank balance. We're now going to find out what your financial state of affairs is. How on earth, on the spot, can a police officer make that decision?
I think that decision can be made, because if you've got a pensioner or a person who's trying to feed their family and they have stolen a loaf of bread, you need to direct them to food banks, social services. You do need to get involved with that family as a police officer, but do you really need to criminalise them? Shouldn't you be looking at a way out?
Where do you draw? I mean, you know, is somebody who could afford a year ago, you know, to have 3 or 4 bottles of wine a week and, you know, roast twice a week and steak on a Thursday and fish and chip takeout on a Friday, but now has trimmed that down a bit? I mean, where do you say that somebody is so poor they're allowed to shoplift? That's the problem.
But no one's saying that. No one is saying that you're allowed to shoplift. But what Andy Cook has tried to say is that each case has to be judged on its own merit. Because if you've got a person who's shoplifting every day, of course they're going to be charged. But if you've got a person who's driven to desperation, and I don't think that Andy Cook is saying that poor people are criminals. However, poor people can become criminalised if the criminal justice system is used against them more than others, and that's where we need to be really careful, because some of these individuals, we've got a crisis at the moment, we've got a cost of living crisis. Some of these individuals are genuine people who work hard, who are driven to desperation, and they just might need some help.
I don't doubt how difficult things are, and they're probably going to get quite a lot worse. I just wonder, finally, is this not soft policing? Is this not sending a message that actually, if you go and shoplift and you tell the copper, you know what, I'm really poor and struggling, he'll let you off?
Police officers aren't there just to present people to the courts. You'd have nothing going to court. You wait 2 years to get a rape to court at the moment. You know, cybercrime affects 50% of the people, and yet we haven't got enough police officers to go and visit burglary victims. So if you're clogging up the system with the little old pensioner who's got a loaf of bread, that's not right. That's where discretion has to come in. You've got to have those checks and balances in. And police officers are there to help the public, not just to lock them up. There's 2 parts to policing.
Well, that's a very, you know, compassionate angle that you put there. I have to say, Palmer, I'm still very concerned that it is opening the door potentially to a lot of people thinking I can get away with this, but we will see. Thank you for joining me on the programme. Now, this big debate that's going on about whether we should put a tax on the oil and gas companies because they've had this big bonus of price rises. And Sir Keir Starmer's leading the charge on it, but actually there's quite a few in the Tory party now agreeing, and snap public opinion polls when people are told, we'll tax the companies that are making an extra £30 million a day in the North Sea and cut your fuel bills. Well, it does, on the face of it, sound quite attractive. We drilled down on it last night. It would lead to about £2 billion being raised. It would barely scratch the surface of the problem of domestic users. But I fear that Boris Johnson, who tends to follow opinion polls rather than lead public opinion, is going to U-turn on this and put a windfall tax on those companies. I've written a piece today for the Daily Telegraph online saying I think there's a better way. Why doesn't the government call the bosses into Downing Street next week, sit them down over lunch and say, look, the public pressure to put this windfall tax on you is becoming too difficult. It's really, really hard. We're going to have to impose it upon you unless you promise to reinvest those extra profits in offshore and onshore oil and gas production. And if you do that, we'll see our way to clearing all the regulatory barriers, the hurdles, and in doing so, tell the nation They're going to create tens of thousands of well-paid jobs. There'll be more, much more, tax going to the exchequer. And for those worried about climate change, it won't increase global CO2. We'll just actually be producing our own energy and become self-sufficient. That is my big idea of the week. I hope somebody across the road behind me listens to it. In a moment, we'll talk fuel. Are we being ripped off at the pumps?
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Coming up on the Mark Steyn Show, cardiologist Dr. Aseem Malhotra is back with a big pharma bang and may have some clues in the ongoing jab jigsaw. How do we deal with a problem like the union? We'll be asking Neil Oliver if it's time for England to get there first with its own referendum to leave the home nations. Plus, free speech champion Leilani Dowding is back to tackle the topics that have been grinding your gears this week. All that and more on the Mark Steyn Show tonight at 8 o'clock.
Your reaction on whether shoplifters should be prosecuted regardless of the state of their bank balance. One viewer says, stealing is stealing. It's taking something that belongs to someone else until you give something in return. Chrissy says, thieving is thieving, no matter the reason why. Emden says, shoplifting, like burglary, involves theft, so yes, they should be prosecuted. Sarah says, when it's a choice of going hungry or stealing, there is really only one answer. Well, that may well be true, Sarah, in some cases, but if the police are seen to go soft on crimes like shoplifting, I think we're opening the doors to some real trouble. I genuinely do. Now, Linton on Ouse was proposed by the Home Secretary. Remember, we're going to ship young males off to Rwanda, but people will be sent also to Linton on Ouse, a little village in North Yorkshire. And today, they've been out protesting. And Anna Riley, GB News' Yorkshire and Humber reporter, has been there. She joins me now.
Hi Nigel, yes, there were more than 100 villagers that turned out to protest, and they had the message of wrong plan, wrong place. These are the signs that they're holding up. They believe that this is just the wrong place for them. There's going to be up to 1,500 asylum seekers in the disused RAF base, and that's versus 700 villagers. They're saying that they've just not got the amenities here, and they've also got concerns for their safety. I spoke to people during the protest, and this is what they had to say.
The whole plan is completely unsafe for the police, the refugee charities, the villagers. Everyone is saying that it's the wrong place to put 1,500 asylum seekers. There's no facilities for them.
We're not against the refugees. If it was 1,500 British white lads, it'd still be the same. It's overpowering.
It would mean for our village that the asylum seekers outweigh the villagers by 3 to 1, which is very intimidating for people living in the village, the community. It's upsetting.
Yeah, it's just really about like safety for us women. I feel like there's no safety put in place, and it's things like me and my friend going out for a run. We will no longer be able to do that anymore. Yeah, it's singly or in a group. I just don't feel safe at all.
Clearly a lot of upset and anger amongst villagers here. They're currently in the village hall behind me having their parish council meeting. There's members of the Home Office there to discuss the concerns of the villagers. In the next 2 weeks, we're being told up to 50 asylum seekers are going to be relocated to this RAF base. So there's currently discussions going on as to whether the increased policing is going to happen in the area, whether there's going to be CCTV, extra amenities. That's all being discussed right now, but clearly a lot of anger here in this village.
Thank you very much indeed for that report from Linton on Ouse. And bear in mind, folks, 1,500 people going to that particular site, but 9,000 have crossed the channel so far this year, and it's going to be 100,000 unless the Rwanda plan is put into place and starts to work. So there may well be a Linton on Ouse coming to you, your village, very soon. Believe me, it's happening. Now, fuel, oil prices through the roof, but that's okay because Rishi Sunak, wasn't it so good of him in the spring statement to give us that 5p cut? Didn't change VAT, but the 5p cut. But concern that as oil prices are well off the top of the market they were, as the 5 pence was supposed to have kicked in some time ago, concerned that at the pumps it doesn't appear to be having any effect. And so Kwasi Kwarteng, the business secretary, wrote to all the organisations concerned, including the Petrol Retailers Association, and they received a swift reply from Gordon Balmer, who is indeed the executive director of that organisation, and he promises that the fuel duty cut has been passed on to consumers. He makes the point that there are many other factors that have increased costs on fuel retailers. Well, that's what he says. I did invite the petrol retailers to come on the show this evening. They declined. They have been on this show before, and I very much hope they will come on again. But somebody who feels strongly that something is wrong, that we're being ripped off at the pumps when it comes to the fuel duty cut, but also the astonishing differential between unleaded and diesel. Well, of course, it's Howard Cox of Fair Fuel UK, a veteran campaigner on these issues. I'm just being kind.
No, thank you, Nigel.
Howard, they're insisting the 5p cut has been put through to the pumps, but the oil price is down. What do you think is going on?
Well, we did a survey, Nigel, with something like 50,000 of our supporters, all drivers, and we asked them, did anyone see that 5p cut? And bear in mind, when Rishi Sunak stood up at that dispatch box, and on that day, Kwasi and him wrote to every single retailer saying it must be actually shown at 6:30 that evening. Yep. No one saw that. Now, I understand people, retailers, and to give Gordon Balmer and the Petrol Retailers Association a little bit of credit here, they're not making the rip-off of profits that people think they are. So I would hate to think people are going to go down to their garages tonight and actually shout at them and say, what are you doing with all this huge amount of profit? They're not making that. It's further up the fuel supply chain, Nigel, and that's the sort of thing we're investigating and looking at the moment. But certainly, the 6p, don't forget it's 20% on top of the fuel duty, so it's 6p we should be seeing. That has not been noted, and the RAC recently in their report said they've only seen 2p drop.
Right, so the RAC are very much on side with you, that something is going wrong. And please explain something to me. 20 years ago, we were told you must all switch to diesel. It will save the environment. And also, of course, you got more miles per gallon with diesel on the long run than you got with petrol. You still do. Yes. And actually, I remember when I first bought a diesel car, at about that period, I think it was a penny cheaper than petrol was. And now it is, what, 15p more per litre?
You're absolutely right. Before we were told to drive diesel, diesel was always cheaper than petrol. We're the only nation in the world now that prices diesel more than petrol. Yes, the only nation, certainly in Europe, we're the only nation. And we're still the highest tax drivers in Europe, despite that 5 to 6p invisible fuel duty cut.
So why the differential?
Well, no one knows. This is the point. I'm working with backbench MPs, and hopefully we'll be making announcements shortly. We want to launch a body called Pump Watch, a bit like Ofgem, Ofcom. Why hasn't 37 million UK drivers, why haven't they got some sort of consumer price protection? Why haven't they got that? We're looking at today, and I looked, and before I came on to see you, today's fuel diesel wholesale price is 8p less than petrol. I repeat, 8p less.
The wholesale price is 8p less.
And yet, as you know, if you just go down any garage, you'll see 14.
It's 182.
It's 14p more.
Yeah, 182 a litre at the moment, something like that.
There's a 23p difference, and they're making around.
So it's not about availability. I mean, I know a fair bit of it is of course, you know, Russia is where I'm afraid so much of it's produced. But so you're arguing. I mean, your suspicion is we're being ripped off on diesel, isn't it?
They're using that as their cash cow to rip us off easily. Petrol is not so profitable at the moment. In fact, some areas, I understand, they're losing money in the forecourts. But why are they doing this? What we want is transparency and fair pricing. When you drive into a garage and you hear that oil prices have gone up or they've come down, you have no idea what the price is going to be at the pumps.
And there's a lag time anyway, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
There is a lag time between what the spot price of oil is and you know, you don't know whether the chain have bought forward on the market or what they've done. I mean, that's difficult to tell. I think this really needs looking at.
Yes.
I actually think, Howard, having read up on it today, I actually think the differential between petrol and diesel is actually potentially a bigger scandal than 5p given to us in duty cut not being noticed. And we're going to write, yes, this programme is going to write to Gordon Barmer. We're on quite good terms with him. We want him to explain, please, why this price differential, if Howard is right that the wholesale price of diesel is, what did you say, 8p?
It's 8p, and that's RAC Foundation figures.
Something is very wrong. Is this the biggest rip-off of modern time? Hey, inflation is bad enough without all of us being legged over. So that letter is going off to Gordon Barmer. Howard, as ever, thank you for joining us here on GB News. Thank you very much indeed. Now, last weekend, it was, in America, Mother's Day. They have it a few weeks later than we do. It's a massive event in America. I was there for Mother's Day last year. I was at Mar-a-Lago, actually. Well, that'll thrill some of you and horrify others, I'm sure. Calvin Klein put out a Mother's Day advert of what I think is supposed to be a pregnant man. Have a look at this picture. Now, it's quite tough to work this out. That looks like a man, but actually it's a woman that has transgendered to being a man and had some breast surgery. You can probably see the scars on that picture, but has now become pregnant and is about to have a baby. And I looked at that picture and I thought, well, why on earth would Calvin Klein be putting this out? But they say that actually this is highlighting the reality of new families. That is what Calvin Klein have said in their advert. But I tell you what, I don't think it is. I wonder how many females that have become trans men are pregnant at the moment, and what as a percentage of the population that is. It will be absolutely minute. So I find that picture a bit odd, a bit disturbing, and I find the attempt by Calvin Klein to tell us this is now absolutely the way that it is wrong. But I tell you what's worse, in my opinion, and that is this TikTok video. Why do I find this video so difficult? Well, I'll tell you why. Because TikTok TikTok is something that young kids looked at. I had a letter from a viewer this week saying his 9-year-old girl was effectively being forced to go on TikTok to join in dance routines at school. So TikTok is for the youngsters. And don't you think the world is confusing enough for young kids growing up without something like that being put to them as being part of everyday normal life? Because I just don't believe that it is. And I'm not saying that from a position of prejudice or anything like that. I'm just saying that we're confusing young kids by doing this. Another What the Farage story that I thought was quite disturbing, really, was the NHS appears to be making quite a mess of a large number of operations. Surgical tools were found post-surgery in over 100 patients last year. There were also many operations, 171 operations done on wrong parts of the body, a total of 407 never events last year in the NHS. A never event is something that should never, ever happening, which is a somewhat sobering thought. But maybe one thing that can cheer us all up. I've absolutely refused, religiously refused, to cover the Wagatha Christie case that has dominated our newspapers so much. This battle, this libel battle that's gone on between the Vardis and the Rooneys, and nobody is coming out very well. But the good news is the Vardis have said, whether they win or lose this case, they're emigrating to America. And all I can say is hooray, and I hope you have a lovely time with Harry and Meghan. Now, in a moment, I'll be joined on Talking Pints by all-round entertainer Bobby Davro. Hold on to your hats. We're back in a moment.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Here we go. Right, it's time for Talking Pints. Yes, it's that time of the day. Now, I'm joined today by a guy who was an all-round entertainer, a funny man. He can play straight men too, but he's not also keen on that. He likes to make people laugh. But let's just see a clip of him before I introduce Bobby Davro. Here he is, a few years ago, playing Gaza.
And footy's me game. You know, a lot of people are surprised to see I'm still about. They thought I'd end up like George Best. Why, I wouldn't mind, you know, because he's a millionaire again now, you know. He's just taking all his empties back. But 1990 was a great year, you know. I remember first off, right, there was a World Cup. Then there was cuddling Mrs. Thatch, you know, Mrs. Thatch, lovely lady, like, you know, before she was shown the red card, of course. And then there was receiving Player of the Year, not for footy, mind, for gurning.
Well, dreadful. Bobby Davro, welcome to Talking.
Lovely to be here. That must be over 35 years old. That
well, it's just after the 1990 World Cup.
Yeah, it was.
You know, when Gazza cried.
I became friendly with Gazza for a while.
Did you?
Yeah, his sister Anna, who married a friend of mine who was a juggler, who taught me to juggle. Your good health, mate. The very best of your past, be the worst of your future. And you saw my legs, and I was fit then, and I had nice legs, but I don't look like that. And Gazza was a charming guy, absolutely charming. I went to visit him in the night just after '91 when he got his injury, and Tottenham, and I'm a fan of Tottenham. And I think we might make the top four.
We've all got our difficulties.
I know. Who do you support?
What an amazing Palace.
Oh, you're a Palace
playing
fan.
Everton tonight.
Yes, they are. Big game.
They could put Everton down
yes,
tonight.
I heard about that.
You know, but Bobby, you are an all-round entertainer, aren't you?
I'm just all-round now.
I mean,
I don't look like that anymore.
But it's impressions, it's singing, it's presenting TV shows, it's EastEnders.
EastEnders, yes.
In EastEnders.
I did that for 14 months, and I imagine myself having a sort of romance with the likes of Ronnie or Roxy or Kat, and I ended up having to snog Shirley every episode. No disrespect to Shirley, but I loved it.
Did you enjoy it?
I loved it. I was just getting going on it, really. I had to find my confidence because a lot of people saw me as an entertainer, and I liked acting. After that, I actually did some more acting. I went and did some plays, and I really enjoy it, so I might do a little bit more of that. But I am an entertainer. I'm sort of all-round entertainer.
Yeah.
That's what I truly love.
But making people laugh, it's I guess it's a fairly addictive thing to do, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is. It is like a drug. I missed it so much in COVID because we got locked down.
Yeah,
we couldn't come to anything.
Yeah.
So it was really tough for entertainers. And so, it was really, I missed the performing of it. I love performing. I do it nearly every night.
And this started when you were a kid?
Yeah, well, sort of around about 14, 15, yeah. I just had a natural ability to sort of impersonate like God, and because he slowed down a bit, slightly more slow. But of course, he's a millionaire again because he's just taken all his empties back. And he, I've been told not to cram in too many jokes for you tonight. I will.
We don't care. We don't care. I mean, the one thing I knew for certain is you wouldn't behave if you came on here. So that would be hopeless,
I'm very naughty. I'm a very naughty boy.
Making people. There's a lot of. Isn't the problem of being a comedian?
There's a problem now because of all this woke and snowflakey stuff.
But when you go out and try to live your life, people expect you to be funny at the local petrol station.
Well, it's nice that they remember me. I mean, someone came up to me tonight and said, "Well, you don't half look like Bobby Davro, no offence." I said, "I am Bobby Davro." They said, "Really? Well, the Bobby Davro?" Yes. I said, "The Bobby Davro." He said, "You don't hear that name very often nowadays." I said, "Well, I do, because it's my name." And people do forget about you, but I've always sort of remained there or thereabouts, Although I'm not back on the telly anymore,
And why is that?
Well, I can't wood stain a floor, bake a cake, or dig my garden up. So I've got nothing, I can't skate, I can't cook, I can't dance, I've got nothing in the garden, I've got bug all in my attic. So I stand.
Well, there's always reality TV.
Well, I know. I'll tell you something the most embarrassing that happened the other day. The shows we were watching now, it sort of makes me blah, blah. I was watching Naked Attraction with my daughter. And I didn't even know she'd auditioned for it. Anyway, that's a gag. You weren't too sure.
I got it.
I find it frustrating sometimes, that entertainers, even the talent shows, which everyone's entitled to have a go, and I think that's important, but it's not about the actual turns, it's not about the talent on there, it's about the show. And as long as the people that go on that realise that.
But we had lots and lots of comedy on the telly in the 70s, 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Lots of funny shows, lots of shows that really pushed pretty close to the edge of what was acceptable.
Well, judged by today's culture, yes, very much indeed.
Well, almost all of them wouldn't get off the ground now, would they?
Well, not many of them, no. But this is where our problem lies, because with the woke and the cancel culture that's crept in, Black Lives Matter, BGLT or whatever it's called, BLGT. There's so many different letters in the thing.
Got to be really careful.
Yes,
you've
got to be really careful. Yeah. And it's ridiculous. In a way, it's ridiculous because I don't. No, it is. I am. I do respect it. I respect it all, but I don't necessarily agree with the fact that it's bringing us together. I think in a lot of ways it's pushing us apart. It's pushing us. I do. I really believe that. And there's a dilemma that I have. For years I've been doing this routine where I do Elvis and I get 3 women out of the audience. Normally they're white women. Okay, I can say that. And if I get a black woman up and do exactly, or a woman of colour, see, this is where it gets dodgy. A woman of colour, if I were to do it, and it'd be the same jokes for her because that's what it should be. Someone in the audience would go, "Oh, well, you were discriminating, or you're being racist towards this lady." And then if you don't ask them to join you on the stage, then someone else will say, well, you didn't include her, because you're leaving her out. So where do we lie? We should all be laughing with each other, not at each other. There's not an ounce of prejudice, racism, homophobia in me at all. I have lots of black friends, lots of gay friends, and we should all be laughing together.
We should be able to take the mickey out of each other.
Yes. Obviously, there's some painful things. The other day, I did a joke about suicide. I said my granddad hung himself on Christmas Day, and as a mark of respect, we didn't take him down the 6th of January. So that's a gag about suicide. Okay, it's a joke. Okay, you've got to remember it's a joke. And someone came up to me and was rather aggressive to me, physically aggressive. And he said, "Didn't you realise how many people have suffered suicides?" And I said, "Well, I'm sorry if you're offended." And everyone's entitled to be offended, but you can't take each individual's offence otherwise there would be nothing left to tell jokes about.
So is comedy in trouble?
Yes, I think it is, but the likes of Ricky Gervais proves that it isn't. The cancel culture isn't healthy. Just because you don't like someone, if you take somebody like Chubby Brown or Jim Davidson, is a friend of mine, they do concerts, and if the people in the town or in the city want to go and see him, they should be entitled to see them.
So they can still book a venue?
Yes, but the people in the theatre don't think it's necessarily good, so they ban those people. But that's not fair, because we don't all hold the same views, and prejudiced it's everyone's entitled to be offended. Everyone is, but it doesn't necessarily make you right. It doesn't mean to say that we should all be offended.
And should we have the right to offend?
Yes, we should. Yeah, because but what offends you might not offend me. And yes, everyone's got the right to be offended, but it doesn't mean there used to be an age where people would basically find prejudice, but now we actually seek it. We actively seek it. We go out there to be offended on things that really we never came into our lives before.
Apart from you, and before all this began, who's the best comedian?
In England, as far as I'm concerned, and this is my own opinion, is Freddie Starr. Freddie Starr was probably the funniest guy I ever saw that came through my generation. But there's some wonderful Michael McIntyre. Michael McIntyre's doing an impression of Michael. There's some brilliant young comedians about, brilliant. But there's also comedians from our era, from my era, that aren't really getting a chance to go on there and do it. And people like what we do. And it doesn't matter that you don't.
But Teddy's not doing it anymore.
Well, not really.
Not really. Little bits of it. I mean, when you were, in the 80s, you were doing a lot of stuff on telly. I mean, you were a big
I had my
star.
go, and everyone has a go.
And you were making the big bucks.
Yes, compared to now, of course not. But it varies, doesn't it? Sometimes, like footballers. I mean, my girlfriend's father was Billy Wright, who he earned, I think I'm allowed to say this, he earned £15,000 in 13 years of professional football. Now they wouldn't get out of bed for 15,000 quid. Maybe some of the Palace players.
I thought they're semi-final of the FA Cup.
Yes.
Middle of the table. They haven't done bad, have they?
They've done very well. And one of my friends,
there
Jim,
you go.
He'll be really happy that they've done well. But so I think football supporters, it's a bit like comedy. Someone stopped me on a plane once and I was having a laugh with some friends. Funny enough, a lot of footballers. And I was messing about and this woman stopped me and said, "You're not funny." I said, "I beg your pardon?" She said, "I don't think you're funny." I said, "Well, my friends are laughing." And she said, "Well, I don't think you're funny." I said, "Well, I don't think you're attractive." Doesn't mean to say that you met someone with bad eyesight that might have married you, but she said, "That's offensive." I said, no, I'm giving it back to you. I don't mean it. But why? And I said it was Alan Brazil was sat right next to me in this yellow shirt, a garish yellow shirt. I said, "Do you like that shirt you're wearing, Alan?" He said, "Of course I like it." I said, "They make shirts like that for people of your taste." And that is what comedy is. Comedy is taste, and you either like it. And Ricky Gervais once said something really wonderful. He said, "I like £1 for every person I've offended with my humour." And he said, "Hang on a minute, I have got £1 for everybody I've offended." Offence is not given, it's taken.
Yeah, and that's all part of free speech.
Free speech, I believe in that. Strongly.
No, well, I actually do think, and some of these stories I cover on here, you can't believe the nonsense that's going on. And yet, I don't know, Bobby, I think that pendulums go back and forth.
Yes, they do.
With these social trends.
Yes,
and I think, I think it'll come back in the right direction.
It shouldn't cause hatred. It shouldn't cause discomfort. I really don't think that it should do. I think I was in PC World yesterday. Gosh, you've got to be careful what you're saying there. Just to lighten it up a bit. But I'm a true believer in free speech.
There you are.
And as long as you're not doing it purposely to create someone, especially as a comedian, I think you're entitled to talk about anything you want to do and joke about it because it is a joke.
Yeah.
And if I've offended someone, they'll get over it. And I say, sorry, I'm sorry you offended.
Well, you want to try big in politics and try to be funny. I had to go.
It's fake news, you know. Donald, I'm doing the Donald just to do an impression for you. Donald J. Trump, what does the J stand for? Genius.
And politically, I'm very neutral. I don't really follow politics. Geopolitics I'm interested in. People like George Friedman I listen to and watch on the videos on YouTube and stuff.
So you like current affairs?
I love current affairs, yeah. I watch it, and I'm a devout atheist, so I watch a lot of stuff about religion, and I respect everybody's faith. You know, but I find that science is the thing that I absolutely...
Devout atheist?
I'm a devout atheist. I don't like religion and what it causes people, but if you have a faith and it brings you comfort, then you're entitled to have that. I don't find it's knowledge. I love the universe and finding out why we are all here and why we're living in this reality.
So we get into the real Bobby Davro.
Yes, quite serious Bobby Davro. You know, because I'm a big Brian Cox fan. It's amazing. I'm just cramming a few impressions.
No, good. We love it.
I don't do you. I could try. You know, you've got that thing. But I'm not really political. Tony Blair. I used to do Tony Blair. And I told the same jokes as Tony that I do as Donald J. Trump. So my politics is sort of...
And you've kept out of that and probably very sensible.
I think so. I haven't got a tough enough skin to really take on the people that have strong views.
Well, and the internet, the internet.
Well, everyone's a critic.
If you express a view, I mean, do you do social media?
I only do Twitter, really. I don't really understand it. I'm not very good at it. I'm a bit of a technophobe. I do a little bit. But I believe live and let live, the freedom of speech, that's what makes democracy, and we live in a democratic country. And I'm compassion. I think you've got to have compassion for people. And, I'm very privileged, but I'm not in that box with saying just because I'm white and I'll say middle-aged. I'm not even middle-aged now. I'm pushing 60, I'm dragging it. And I don't think that we should be compassionate to everybody, to human beings. I don't think we need scriptures to tell us how to be moral. I think you're either moral or you're not moral.
Interesting. Now, lockdown was a catastrophe for you, wasn't it?
It certainly was. It was awful. I had to sell the house, and then sadly my father died, which didn't make things easier. But then there's a flip side to everything. You can look at it. It was an awful time with Dad dying, but because I wasn't working, I could spend more time with him, and so that's the glass half full. You've got to be glass half full.
So what was it? A couple of years without earning any money, basically.
Yeah, 14 months without earning money. I sold my house, and things were tough. But I'm okay. I'm so much better off than so many other people. I'm blessed. I've got 3 gorgeous kids, and when I count my blessings, I count them twice. And I'm trying to be as positive as I can.
Yeah. So what next? What next with Bobby Davro?
Well, I'll plug my show coming up in Crewe.
Do
a pantomime on the 27th of May. I will be at Crewe Theatre, Lyceum Theatre, coming up to do a one-man show. I work maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and that's enough for me. I love working. I love singing. I love doing.
Well, I've seen your one-man show.
Yes,
it's a bit of everything, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
And the poor audience that get dragged out onto the stage. I mean, it's a bit rough on them, isn't it?
It can be, when you say, but I think they enjoy it.
Of course they do.
I don't ever think that, some people aren't going to like me, but that's the same with every comedian, every entertainer. You have your favourites.
Well, I tell you what, if they didn't like you, they wouldn't pay the 25 quid or whatever it is to come along.
Precisely. And when they come up afterwards, which they're going to do on the 27th of this month. And I did a pantomime. I do a lot of pantomimes. I do 2 a year now, pantomimes. So I love doing pantomime, and that's a skill set in its own. You have to learn how to do it. And I'm very proud of being able to go out and make a family audience laugh, from the little toddlers, the teenagers, mums and dads, grannies and grandpas, uncles, the whole family laugh with jokes that are right for that set. And then if you come and see my live show, it can be a bit risque, but I don't go out there to offend. That's not my bag. I go out there to entertain, but I want to entertain everybody. And that is becoming more difficult now.
It's becoming much more difficult.
But
Bobby,
I still keep trying.
Keep doing what you do. You've brought a lot of joy, a lot of happiness to a lot of people, and I know you're going to go on doing it.
Well, thank you very much, Nigel.
For joining me on
Pleasure
Talking
to
Pints.
meet you.
Great to see you here.
Cheers, you're good health.
You.
This is my first drink, by the way. I haven't touched a drop of alcohol for 35 days.
Really?
Yes, that's not consecutively. That's over a 25-year period. Cheers.
Well, it is time for Barrage the Farage. You've sent your questions in. I have not had a sneak preview. I'm keeping Bobby here because it may be too difficult for me. Let's get this show on the road. One viewer asks, with the censorship of comedy such as Little Britain, are we no better than China and other authoritarian regimes? I don't do impressions, but China. Now, Little Britain was, I mean, I have to say, I love Little Britain.
Yes,
I thought they were absolutely brilliant.
Yep.
And yet, you know, David Walliams, I mean, they're all being told that they did things that were horrible.
It was acceptable of its time. Maybe it
was only 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I know, but that was the same for me. I never really came across that kind of thing, but we were doing Stevie Wonder impression when I first came in and did Copycats, which was a show back in 88, 89, something like that. You know, we were doing black people, and it didn't seem, people didn't seem to have a problem with it. But now, of course, you couldn't do it.
So the question is, are we becoming like China?
China. I don't know much about China, really. I like their food.
Right, he dodged that one.
I dodged that one.
He dodged it very well. Ryan asks, will cancel culture eventually cancel itself? Ryan, I really believe, if you look back through many centuries, say in this country, you will see us going through really authoritarian periods followed by permissive periods.
Yes.
You know, you think about Cromwell and the sort of almost reign of terror we had in this country, and by the time of the Restoration we had gin lane and debauchery on the streets of London.
I haven't had much debauchery lately, I must be honest.
Well, let's hope the pendulum swings quickly for Bobby's sake, shall we? Mickey asks, do you agree that no peace deal should be agreed until Russia returned to the original borders? Mickey, what I was saying last night to my Talking Pints guest, the Ukrainian Member of Parliament, was we should have a dialogue. We should have a narrative with Putin, even if at this stage there are no sensible terms that can be agreed. Let's at least have a narrative along the lines of what Churchill said, that George Orr is better than war. And yes, I know Putin's done and his armies have done some truly frightful things, but that's not the point. What I don't want us to do is to box this guy completely into a corner where he might do something.
It's more dangerous than ever now.
Well, it is dangerous, isn't it? You scared?
A little scared, because basically what's his choices? Because, you know, the Americans now are putting their weapons in, and they're going to be going in there for the next few weeks, because they believe that Ukraine can win. And what's the options for Putin? He's going to have to probably take out the weapons, isn't it?
It does seem to be a sort of fight to the death now, doesn't it? The sort of
crazy,
mentality.
Isn't it? Crazy. What for?
I'm worried about it too.
Tip of land or something.
I'm worried about it too.
I worry a lot.
Chris asks, would you buy an electric car? And if not, how long do you think it would be before you buy one? Chris, you can't get a charging point even in central London. And I learned something the other day. There are commercial vans. Go on to the charging point, leave the van there all day and don't pay any parking fees. Electric car, Bobby, last
Not for me, not for me. I was chatting to Howard about it. You know the difference between paraffin and petrol, don't you? Well, there's 2 F's in paraffin and no F in petrol. And when I queued for this is going back, a couple of months, petrol shortage, I was queuing on the...
yeah, it was hard, wasn't it?
Yeah, on the hardcore there for, 3.5 hours. And I only wanted a Mars bar and a packet of crisps. And the thing is that, no, I wouldn't buy an electric car.
No. There's no stopping Bobby Davro of that, there's no doubt. I am now done for the week. Yes, that's right. I'll be back with you on Monday evening at 7 o'clock here on GB News. But after me, it's going to be Mark Stein. Mark, what have you got coming up on your show this evening?
Oh, we've got... I could just listen to Bobby Davro for the next hour. That was terrific stuff, Nigel. And he's quite right. A joke is a small, beautiful jewel of a thing, and when the state starts clamping down on them, you read Milan Kundera's novel, The Joke. A guy makes a joke in communist Czechoslovakia and his entire life is ruined. That's the way we're heading in the United Kingdom. Coming up on tonight's Mark Stein Show, we'll continue to explore various aspects of the controlled demolition of the Western world. Bored with the COVID? They've already got this season's news plague. All coming up after the weather.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGiven. Following a fairly bright day for many, it's fine at first overnight. There will be rain turning up in some places by dawn, becoming more extensive through the morning, and that then is replaced by showers as an area of low pressure towards the northwest gets ever closer. But it's from the south that some rain will turn up by dawn. Initially, clear spells for England, Wales, central and eastern Scotland. But through the night, it will turn increasingly cloudy from the south, and we'll start to see 1 or 2 light outbreaks of rain into central southern England by this stage. Showers also return to western Scotland, but in between, a lot of fine weather, clear spells, and temperatures holding up at 10 or 11 in the south, dipping to around 8 or 9 further north. And then a dull start to Friday, and increasingly a damp one for central southern England, parts of the Midlands, and increasingly East Anglia in the southeast, where the rain will be persistent and at times heavy. That clears through later in the afternoon, and following on, we've got a rash of showers across much of the country, interspersed by bright spells, but the showers, I think, merging to longer spells of rain for western Scotland, and then that moves through the rest of Scotland during the evening, as well as parts of northern England, the Midlands and eastern England. Clear spells return, and actually Friday's a cool-ish day with those clear spells overnight. Temperatures will drop further. I think by dawn, single figures in the countryside, 10 or 11 in main urban centres. Cloudy spells further west, but even here it will be mostly dry. It's really western Scotland where we're going to see some showers to start off the weekend. But in general, through Saturday, the cloud will build. So after that bright start, a cloudier afternoon, 1 or 2 showers, just about anywhere, but the most frequent downpours will be across Scotland. And then into Sunday, some more persistent wet weather in the north, followed by showers, highs of 23 degrees.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be